Welcome back to our Peace Through Strength podcast, brought to you by the American Security Council Foundation. I'm your host, Joy Vacherbeck. Back with me is our senior analyst, Lauren Sanford.
Joy.
Larry. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Brian Freeman. He is the author of 31 thrillers and 6 Jason Bourne series.
6 books in the Jason Bourne series, that's right.
6 books in the Jason Bourne series. So this is going to be a very interesting podcast. Would you like to start us off, Larry?
Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say I feel a little guilty, dealing with intelligence officers because Jason Bourne has kind of a difficult relationship with that community. So.
Justifiably so. So why don't you talk about how you got started on the Jason Bourne series? Because you've been writing books for years before you got involved with Jason Bourne.
Yeah, I have. As I say, I have 31 thrillers out in the market. I've been writing books now for 20 years. And it's been sort of an interesting transition for me to take over the Bourne series because my own books tend to be very different. They're more psychological mysteries, more emotional, intimate kinds of stories. And I've never really been an action thriller sort of author, but when Putnam took over the Bourne series, they were looking for someone to kind of reboot the series. And I think their perception was that Jason Bourne, what's made him such an iconic, enduring character is the complexity of his psychology. I mean, here's a hero who has lost his memory. He's struggling with kind of basic issues of who he is and what kind of a man he is, and can you be a moral man and do the kinds of things that he does. And that was really the element that they wanted to bring out in the books, and that's kind of right in my wheelhouse. So I've had the opportunity now to write 6 Bourne novels. The 7th comes out this summer, and it's been a tremendous honor for me. And growing up as a kid, I was a huge Robert Ludlum fan, and The Bourne Identity was one of my favorite novels. But if you had told me back when I was 17 years old that 4 decades later books would be coming out with my name and Robert Ludlum's name on the cover, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are.
Well, Brian is from Minnesota, so he had long winters in which to read the books by Robert Ludlum and to pontificate on the morality of the books and the actions taken therein. So he now lives in Florida, right near where we are today here in Sebastian, Florida. So welcome to Florida.
Thank you.
He's been down here a couple of years. So.
Yeah, I decided that I could write about the cold without actually being cold. So.
Does it make it more difficult to write now that you're in this warm and sunny Florida?
Well, I find it actually very creative and inspirational being in Florida, and I find that I love writing outside. So my most recent novel before The Bourne Vendetta was a standalone thriller called Break Every Rule, and Break Every Rule not only is set in Florida, it was the first book I wrote down here, and I wrote almost all of it sitting outside in the backyard, and so I just love writing in the fresh air. So would not have been doing that in January or February in Minnesota.
No.
So your most successful book was?
I've had real good fortune with a number of books. Probably my own personal favorite of the books I've written is a novel called The Deep, Deep Snow. Very, very appropriate for a Midwestern boy. But that was a New York Times bestseller. It started out as an Audible original and now is available in print and ebook as well. But again, a very emotional mystery, and those are the kinds of stories I like to tell. But then on the flip side of that, we've gone back on the New York Times list with the Bourne novels, which I think had been a pretty long time since a Jason Bourne novel was on the bestseller list. And so for me, that's been a great honor and very exciting to be able to kind of bring Robert Ludlum's legacy back to life and give sort of a whole new wave of readers the opportunity to meet Jason Bourne.
Well, the Ludlum family estate has the book section in one, and the movies, TV series is another section, so you're not tied in with that at all.
Yeah, I keep thinking when's Matt Damon going to call me up and invite me to lunch? Hasn't happened yet. Matt, if you're out there, I'm here. So, but I also think that with the books now and Bourne being in a modern setting, there's some great raw material if they want to do a streaming series like Amazon's done with Jack Ryan and Jack Reacher. Jason Bourne would be perfect for that.
Yeah. And all you have to do is read the papers to find out what's going on in the will for another idea and a plot.
That is so true. When you read my books, not only my Bourne novels, but my own novels as well, there's always kind of a rip from the headlines feel. I like dealing with modern issues and current events, and there's plenty of raw material. That's one of the interesting things for me about having taken over the Bourne series. When we first met Jason Bourne in The Bourne Identity, Rod Ludlum's original novel back in 1980, that was an environment in which the character was coming out of the cultural environment in which you had Vietnam and you had Watergate, and it was a very low trust, high conspiracy kind of environment. And so as I started thinking about Jason Bourne in this era, it occurred to me that, well, actually this is kind of a fitting time to be bringing Bourne back, because we have a very similar situation going on now. So
low trust of government and Congress, and
low trust of just about any institution in society. Exactly. We were talking earlier, and you said that even trust in the media has kind of evaporated in a way that didn't exist back in the 1970s. So that I wouldn't say that's good for society, but it's good for authors, and it's exactly the kind of sort of cultural milieu in which Jason Bourne fits right in.
What's the title of your new book?
The most recent is The Bourne Vendetta. That came out in January, and I'm getting a little concerned only because it seems like the themes that show up in the Bourne books suddenly kind of come to life. I released The Bourne Shadow last summer, and it revolved around a French presidential election in which the far right was threatening to take over, and included a presidential assassination attempt that many people thought was a conspiracy. And I was listening to it as it came out and thinking, oh, this is hitting a little bit close to home. And now with The Bourne Vendetta, one of the big themes in this book is a huge fire out in L.A. So I'm kind of worried about what happens next.
Wow. Well, and going back to something you said earlier too, is that Bourne kind of struggles with losing his memory, and then the moral issues of what he's doing, and I think probably a lot of servicemen can relate to that as well.
Yes.
My husband's a Marine, so I
sure.
There.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's one of the most compelling themes in the Bourne series is Bourne really struggling with the idea of who he is, and I think the loss of memory kind of exaggerates that whole effect because he doesn't have his past to sort of inform his decision making. All he can really do is assess what he thinks is good and not good in terms of where he is, and so that's a theme I try to come back to in the books over and over is how does Bourne kind of deal with the decisions that he has to make, and what's the moral framework in which he exists as a hero.
Mm-hmm. I guess we all have to do that, deal with decisions we made.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in the last book, one of the other Treadstone agents that Bourne is dealing with tells him that in some ways she wonders if he's actually lucky having lost his memory. Is that what's kind of enabled him to retain a piece of his soul in a way that she and some of her other fellow agents don't always feel that way.
Yeah. So, do you have any plans for other books in the works, or?
Yeah, they're keeping me hopping. I've got another Bourne book. The Bourne Escape is coming out this summer, July 29th, and I'm working on my 8th Bourne novel right now, The Bourne Revenge, which will be out next January. And then I have a new standalone psychological mystery called Photograph, and Photograph will be out in October. And then later this year, I'll be writing the 12th in my Jonathan Stride police procedural series, so that'll be coming out in 2026.
You're a busy man. So,
yeah.
So how the viewers of this podcast, how would they find out what you're doing?
Yeah, they can find me on the web. My website is bfreemanbooks.com. That's all one word, bfreemanbooks.com. And then I'm also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, under B. Freeman Books as well. And so my website has information about all of my books, both the Bourne novels and my own novels, and a printable list of everything that's out there, and links to be able to find the books online as well.
So do politicians or leaders in Washington ever contact you for inspiration or thoughts or what you think?
I would be a little nervous if they did, based on what's in my books. But it has been really interesting to find out, again, what sort of an iconic character Bourne is, because it as soon as you tell people that you write the Jason Bourne series, they're just that's so exciting, and I've had so many people reach out about that. So yeah, it's been a huge honor for me, and a lot of fun. I mean, these have been really enjoyable books for me to write.
Yeah, you had a little brief meeting with the CIA.
Yeah, that's right. I had the opportunity in December to be part of an authors panel at CIA headquarters, and so I was up there with David McCloskey and Alma Katsu, also thriller writers, and David and Alma both have agency backgrounds, so I was the lone outsider in the crowd. But what we were talking about, the way that fiction can influence how popular perceptions of the intelligence community, and how movies and TV kind of shape how the CIA is perceived. So yeah, it was a fascinating day for me. I loved having the chance to go through headquarters and get a tour of the CIA museum. So it was a very special day for me.
Well, you have a huge advantage over those two writers who were former intelligence officers, because they have to submit their writings to the CIA's review board.
That is true. Yeah. Fortunately, when I submit a Bourne manuscript to Putnam, it doesn't come up with a lot of black lines through the manuscript. So
they might be calling you back after these fires.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And basically, again, getting back, you keep abreast of what's going on in the world. I'm sure you make notes and say, now this might be useful, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the I'm always kind of looking through the paper and looking at what's going on in the world, and seeing it through the lens of how this might shape a Jason Bourne novel. And the thing about kind of writing ripped from the headlines books and using themes that show up in the newspaper is it gets you over the hurdle with readers of plausibility, that when you're dealing with things that people have read about and things that have happened, it automatically readers realize, well, this is something that could happen in some way or another. And I think that was really one of Ludlum's gifts as well, is that in his books he dealt kind of from a conspiracy standpoint with a lot of real modern issues. Always left readers wondering, well, is that how it really happened? So,
well, one final question, not final, but one question that everybody that thinks they can write has is, so how did you get started writing before? So you graduated from Carleton College, which is one of the leading liberal arts colleges in the country. And
I'm one of those people that writing books, that's been my dream as far back as I can remember. I can literally remember sitting in 6th grade class working on my first mystery novels. So this has been my passion for a long time. And but writing's always, publishing's a very tough business. It took me 20 years to really break through, and I actually wrote 5 novels in my life that are still sitting in my nightstand drawer that went nowhere. But admittedly, this goes back to when I was 13, so not a whole lot of publishers clamoring for books written in Bic pen on binder paper. So
did you ever consider self-publishing?
Well, when I started, self-publishing really didn't exist. Back in the early 2000s, it was still a pretty traditional publishing market. And since I've been in the business, the publishing model has kind of turned completely on its head, and so many things have changed. Ebooks barely existed when I started out. Audiobooks were, 18 cassettes, so hardly anyone got audiobooks. And self-publishing, other than, a handful of print vanity presses, there really wasn't anything like self-publishing. So everything has kind of changed since I started. But
So are your books on audio now?
yes, all my books are on audio, ebook, in print, it's a whole different world for authors trying to publish these days. But I think the good thing is that the one thing that hasn't changed is the passion that people have for a good story. I mean, I think that the demand for that is as strong as ever.
And Putnam's taking good care of you, and
They've been great. And the estate, the Ludlam estate, has been terrific. That's one of the things you always worry about when you're taking over a legacy project like this, is how much freedom do you have to be creative, and do they kind of tie your hands? The Ludlam estate has been terrific. I mean, they've really given me the freedom to make Bourne my character and to really let that character grow and evolve. So I very much appreciated that.
Great. Joy, do you have any questions?
Maybe there'll be another movie come out. Maybe not that demon, but someone else
well,
based on your character. Huh?
I think that would be just great. Yeah, I think it's about time we see Jason Bourne back on the screen.
Well,
Yes, I do too. I like that.
thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to our listeners. Join us again for our next podcast on the American Security Council Foundation. Thank you.